Ecclesiastes chapter 4 is where we are. Second week while they were out working, I was working on a couple sermons, so I figured if I'm down, I might as well get the brain working. We're on Ecclesiastes chapter 4. I'm going to be reading here from verse 1 to verse 8. Again I looked and saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressor, and they have no comforter. And I declared that the dead who had already died are happier than the living who are still alive. Well, that's encouraging, isn't it? But better than both is he who has not yet been, who has not seen the evil that is done under the sun. And I saw that all labor and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbor. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. The fool folds his hands and ruins himself. Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man, all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. Wow. Working for God. It all happened in Japan. Karoshi is a Japanese word, which means death from overwork. It's a syndrome that now is so common that 30,000 people every year kill themselves because of overwork. You talk about exhaustion. And so in 1990, the Japanese government has been forced to provide restitution to the widows. And as Americans, we hear and we think of ourselves, well, this is crazy. What are these poor people thinking? Yet all the while, many of us are working ourselves to death, or have worked ourselves to death, and we're tired more than we're retired. But the question is, why? What's driving us to work so hard and so long? Our natural temptation may be to claim, I work hard and I work long to glorify God. And yet that may be true, but we would suggest for most of us that's only partially true, because the truth be known, many of us are working hard to climb up that corporate ladder of success. We want to be successful, provide for our families, provide for our retirement, provide for our grandchildren. And so we climb the corporate ladder, we try to impress our boss, we try to meet our own expectations, and we want to make more money. So the working long and hard for that reason can lead to a bitter disappointment, because a lot of times people climb up the ladder of success and find that their ladder is leaning on the wrong wall. If you don't believe me, well, we want to ask the Japanese people, of course, and they're the ones that committed this karoshi. Yet Solomon had a solution in Ecclesiastes 4. He says he is encouraging us to work smarter, not harder, not longer. It's kind of interesting when we talk about Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes. At times he has a very positive outlook on work and labor. He says, I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil or work. This is the gift of God. Now this is Solomon that in chapter 3 and in chapter 5 and in chapter 9, he talks about work is positive, work is good. But then other times he takes the opposite. He says work is negative. He says, what does man gain from all his labor at which he toils under the sun? Vanity of vanities, cotton candy, nothing, just a puff of blowing of the wind. And so in Ecclesiastes 1:3, Ecclesiastes 2, he comes up with the negative downside of work. Now to Adam, we realize that when he was cursed, his cursing was he's going to be toiling for the rest of his life. And Adam lived to be 962 more years. Was it 962 or 950? I think it was 950, Glenn.
I think it was 950.
Methuselah was 969.
Yep.
One guy was 962. Enos was 365. You're supposed to remember all those, aren't you? But Adam, he said, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree from which I commanded you, you must not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Though painful toil, you will eat of it all the days of your life. By the sweat of your brow you will eat of your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. So here we have Adam and Eve toiling. She's toiling in the house, and he's toiling in the field. But we want to realize that when we consider all these things, we need to choose contentment over achievement. When we were growing up, Dad would always tell us moderation in everything. So Solomon imparts that same truth, that he says we want to consider the workaholic. We also want to consider the lazy sluggard. And then there's that biblical balance between being a workaholic and the lazy sluggard. In chapter 4, verse 4 of Ecclesiastes, it says, I have seen that every labor and every skill which is done is the result of rivalry between man and his neighbor. This too is vanity and a striving after the wind. So he once again observes life, and he is the student of human nature and activity, and people are watching, and Solomon discovers that people compete with one another in everything. The twofold use of the word every undoubtedly means every type of labor and achievement rather than every individual instance of these things. Much achievement is the result of a desire to be superior over others. Here you get that envy idea. You succeed at work, why? Because you want to show everybody up, I'm the best. So we live in that constant state of competition, and research indicates that 9 out of 10 office workers suffer from professional envy. They envy colleagues. They perceive their colleagues to have more glamorous or better paid jobs. I remember when Sandy was working as a professional school teacher. And Julie Gellenwater, she was a housewife. I mean, they had 9 houses they were landlord over, and they were property managing. Of course, they had to bring in the trades to do the cleanup work and bring in the repair guys to do this. And she ran a little bit of Avon route. But my wife was working hard in the classroom and bringing 2 hours of homework home every night, and sometimes 4 hours of homework home every night. And she was depressed. I mean, she was worn out. Julie, meanwhile, was looking at my wife enviously, saying, oh, if I could just get out of the house and be a professional, to be a school teacher like Sandy. Meanwhile, my wife says, honey, boy, it'd be neat if I had a job like Julie. All we had to do is call in the trades and collect the rent, you know. All we do is just call in the trades and the cleaning people and collect the rent.
Amen. Amen.
And you know why the grass is green? I've seen 2 cows with their heads through barbed wire fence, each eating at each other's pasture. You know why the grass is greener on the other side of the fence? Either number 1, they work harder, or number 2, there's a septic tank over there, and it makes the grass grow better.
Do it.
What drives many people to climb this corporate ladder and outdo others? Well, this feeling of success. In the 1960s, one generation got sick of the influence of the 1950s, so they rebelled. This group bailed out and claimed, we are going to become the flower children. And this was the Jesus movement too during that time. Everybody gave up ambition, and they gave up drive for financial success. And maybe their daddy was a banker, maybe they were corporate president, but they became pot-smoking, flower children. And they let their hair grow long, and they quit taking baths, and they just sat on the grass and hummed. Obviously, this is not the way to accomplish God's purpose in the world, but we dare say it's laziness, it's foolishness, but here you flower people. And they even had those Volkswagen buses. If you remember those Volkswagen buses, they paint flowers all over those things. And we called them hippie mobiles, if you remember. And they all head up to Haight-Ashbury in California, because that's where all the hippie pot smokers hung. Now they all talk about, we're going to go to California because that's where all the pot smokers hung.
Is that Cassandra?
Things have not changed. No. One day a mother walked in on her 6-year-old son. He found the boy crying. What's the matter, she asked. The boy replied, I just figured out how to tie my shoes. Well, honey, that's wonderful. You're growing up. But why are you crying? Because he says, now I'll have to do it every day for the rest of my life.
Not if you get that.
Maybe you feel like a 6-year-old boy that you're going to have to go to work the rest of your life. you're a stay-at-home mom and you recognize that you're going to be doing the same task for what you may seem the rest of your life. Perhaps you work a monotonous job day in, day out, and it kills you to know that you may be working this job for the rest of your life. But God wants you to know that that their glory in the grind, and shrug off the laziness. Work like today is your last day of work, for it just might be, work smarter, not harder. Now this is one thing, when we were in Bible college, they taught us, stupid, withdraw from Social Security and plan to work until you die in the pulpit and preach in the pulpit till you pass out and die. And that was what was taught us. I mean, I was 17 years old, and I said, well, if I'm vibrant health, I'm good. I'll plan to keep going. And we were going to get a travel trailer. We were going to go have revival meetings. In our older days, we were going to go church to church to church to church and live in a camper like Archie Ware did, and travel from church to church and camp out in the church parking lot and preach revival meetings. That was a wonderful idea back then, but how many churches have revival meetings nowadays? Few. So right now we'd have a job, Ray, if we were in our camper trailer, staying at a KOA campground and doing that. But we ended up working 20 years, Mother, or 25 in the monument business?
28 for you.
28 years. 28 years, and I was working for a funeral home there. And we put into Social Security. And I worked 10 years, 40 quarters, and I was able to collect minimum if I had stayed with that bad advice they gave me when I was 17 years old and a freshman in Bible college. Fortunately, we worked 25 years and dearly paid into Social Security. I hated those quarterly payments, but looking back now, we're able to do mission work and able to work with the church in mission full time because of 28 years of putting into Social Security. And number two, young people, if your house is not paid off by the time you're ready to retire, you will not retire. And if you've got your kids in college, you will not save anything for retirement until you get your kids through school. Welcome to life.
Sandy comes, some of us that were older did the same.
Yeah. And then once you get your kids through school, then you save up for retirement, and then you can retire. Work has changed drastically over the centuries, over the past 150 years. Psychologists, sociologists did a study of work that managers desire to make work as pleasurable as possible for a satisfied employee is known to be more productive. So even with modern convenience, work continues to be a drudgery for some, but not for most of us. Here's Google. Google is the second favorite company in the entire world of what people really want to work. If you want a job, get a job at Google because they're wonderful people work for them. And you don't have to come to Google with coat and tie. When I worked for the funeral home, guess what they required us to wear? Coat, vest, tie, shirt. I mean, professional.
Can you imagine what I would have looked like sweating?
Well, I'm just saying what life was. But this is where Google has been a pleasing place to work. They were user friendly, and Google became the number 2 in America favorite place to work.
Wow.
Now, there's a new store opening in Minnesota's Mall in America. It's called Minneapolis. An emphasis on nap, N-A-P. It's that you can rent a comfy spot where weary shoppers can take a nap for 70 cents a minute.
70.
So for an hour nap, it's 6 times 70 is $4.20 or something like that. No, $42. That's big. Then there's a store. This included theme rooms. You got Asian Mist and Tropical Isle and Deep Space, and the walls are thick enough to drown out the sounds of squealing children outside. The company's website says, escape the pressure of real world into pleasures of an ideal one. So guests will want to listen to music, put their feet up, watch the water trickling in the beautiful stone waterfall, breathe in the positive ionization filtered air, enjoy the full body massager, and just take an enjoyable escape from the fast-paced lifestyle. Napopolis. The goat passages on work from Ecclesiastes show us that worldly wisdom gains no satisfaction from labor. The never-ending journey on a treadmill of career advancement, often only to maintain one status, leads to what we call burnout. Solomon experienced something like burnout. His youthful enthusiasm for the kingship had soured, and now the work and the job began. And we talk about this is the work treadmill. And not only is he on the treadmill, he's doing his computer work while he's working on the treadmill. And you think this is good enough for the guys. The gals have learned to work and walk on the treadmill.
Amen.
Because life is treadmill. But if you want to succeed, choose relationships over riches, according to the wisdom of Solomon. The verses remind us that people should be our priority. If you are too busy for people in your life that matter most, you are too busy. One of my professors, he'd have people over for company, and then he excused himself from the dinner table and go down to study and start working on his publications, and working on his books, and working on his other thing. And I'm thinking, okay, we went to Bible college to study, and when you got people there at your table, sorry folks, I'm going to leave you. I got to go back in my office and study again. And I'm thinking of some of my peers, they're lousy at calling and door-to-door work because they'd spend 2 or 3 days a week in their office writing books. And I'm thinking, I do not get out of bed 4 o'clock in the morning and write books. I didn't get out of bed 5 o'clock in the morning. I get out of bed 6:30 or 7 or 7:30, whatever, and I'm not writing books. And when somebody calls, Kenny gives me a call, and I says, Kenny, what's your problem? He said, I need prayer, so I have prayer with Kenny. And I'm telling my wife, I says, he's just as important as anybody. And I says, Kenny, you got the gift card for McDee's. And so I says, me and you are going out for breakfast, and you are treating. Because he's got $70 worth of McDonald's gift cards. I don't have $70 worth of McDonald's gift cards. He does. He does. And anybody in this church has $70 worth of gift cards of McDonald's because people give them to you because they think you're homeless or something? He's treating. Anybody want to come with me? He's treating, But I find, we can't be too busy for people like Kenny. Because when he calls, it may be a call for help.
Amen. Amen.
And so we try to be attentive, don't we, Andrew? Because last time Andrew went on that call, couldn't find him, but it was a serious situation. Solomon wrote in the chapter 4, 7, and 8 that then I looked again at vanity. There was a certain man without a dependent, having neither a son nor a brother, yet there was no end to his labor. In other words, he's working these 18-hour days. Indeed, his eyes were not satisfied with riches. He never asked, and for whom am I laboring and depriving myself of pleasure? This too is vanity and is a grievous task. And I remember in Pennsylvania, the coal miners, they work overtime. They work long days. And they made $100 a day. They make $500 a week when we were making $150 a week. They got 3 times our pay. They got paid good. But most coal miners didn't want their children working in the mines. Yeah. But I remember, the guys that were working all these extra hours never had time to go on vacation. Never had time to go to the mall. They never had time to go to the park. Never had time to go to a ball game. They were work. Never had time to enjoy things. But then you know what happened when they're on strike? They're up at the church building. Hey, preacher, let's play ping pong. And so we go around the table ping pong. There'd be 10 of us running around the table with ping pong. 2 paddles on, and then you go around the table playing ping pong. And we played ping pong. I got pretty good at ping pong. Great ping pong player. And then we started night classes for the Bible college. And so a lot of these coal miners, when they're on strike, since they're down anyway, let's turn it into whatever. And in Pennsylvania, during the spring, when everybody's putting in their gardens, you didn't have time for Bible college and classes. But during the winter, when snow was ankle deep, knee deep, then you had all kinds of time for Bible classes. And so we would have revival meetings in the spring and in the fall, but you never have them in the summer because all the northerners go down south to go to the beach, go to Disney. And during the winter, all the northerners go down to the south to thaw out and get out of the ice and break a hip. And Mary, I never understood how people were timid about ice in Pennsylvania, so fearful they're going to break a hip. Oh, no. And I'm a young guy, I'm 28 years old, and I'm thinking, what about your wusses? I'm thinking, what about your wusses? Worried about slipping and falling on the ice. Get your body in church, old people. Get your body in church. Until Brother Richard remembers these words years and years and years later. And I take one little bam, and I'm on walker, crutches, and cane for 5 weeks since surgery, 6 weeks since my fall. And then I realize, I feel your pain! Anyone of this might, of course, we do with that person in mind. Man believes in the value of hard work and the inherent dignity of a job well done. He's probably married, has at least 3 children. His pictures he carries around his wallet. He loves his wife and thinks about her more than he knows. It's true he works long hours. Often he's gone by 6 in the morning and doesn't come home until 7 at night. Pressure at work are so enormous that it takes the man an hour or 2 to unwind, so he doesn't spend much time talking in the evening. Give me my paper, give me my sports, give me my news, give me my whatever. I'm so tired. That's all he can do is to read the paper, watch a little television, and then go to bed. His blood pressure's too high. He knows he needs to exercise. His diet isn't the best. Sometimes he's a grouch. And snaps at his family, and he regrets it later. I remember this waitress came up to a customer, and what did he say? He said, "Lady, do you serve, what was it, Mom? Do you serve crab?" She says, "Sir, we serve anybody." It's true that he works 70 hours a week, but he doesn't think of himself as a workaholic. He simply loves his job. He's good at it, and thankfully he's able to bring home a nice paycheck and provide good for his family. One of these days he plans to slow down and smell the coffee, but not today. He gulps his coffee, heads to the door before the family knows he's gone. One evening he comes home and his family's not there. While he's at work, the kids grew up. His wife went back to college and found a career of his own. His children moved out, and now the house is empty, and he can't believe it. The board of directors just named him CEO. Now there's no one to share the good news with. He made it to the top alone. How many of us wake up in the morning and look forward to our work? Though the standard of 40-hour work week, almost all spend more than 40 hours because you got to get there, and you got overtime, and then you come home and you think about work and phone calls, and some of the other than 40 of our best hours are spent at work, and we need to be concerned about these 40 hours as Christians. But then we've learned that choose influence over popularity. In 4 verses, Solomon reminds us that popularity is fleeting, therefore we're better to choose influence over popularity. The story goes like that: the poor yet wise lad is better than an old and foolish king who no longer knows how to receive instruction. For he has come out of prison to become king, even though he was born poor in his kingdom. I've seen all the living under the sun throng to the side of the second lad who replaces him. There's no end to all the people, to all who were before them, and even the ones who will come later will not be happy with him. For this too is vanity and striving after the wind. If we're honest with ourselves, we will acknowledge that life at the top is fleeting. I remember my son, when he was working for a company, they had a $200,000 worth of extra income that the company made, and he gave a $100,000 bonus to the employees. And he had 1,100 ladies working in the cabinet factory. He put $100,000 to new. Got to get some extra equipment, tow motors, and he could have bought $200,000 worth of tow motors, but he says, "No, you helped earn the extras, so I'm going to give and work." So he gave a $100 Walmart gift certificate to Christmas to every one of the employees. You know what the employees said? "Walmart? $100? How measly can you get? Walmart? It should have been Publix or something like that. Walmart!" He says, "Dad, it's awful lonely here at the top."
Yeah.
See, Chief Finance Officer. Our attention span is short, our memory is non-existent, and our only question is, what have you done for me lately? Presidents, prime ministers may have extremely high approval ratings for a while, but they don't last. Just ask President Bush. There's an 18-0 Patriots game. Quarterback Tom Brady, who's one of the greatest players in NFL history, will be a GOAT. Former Dallas Cowboy quarterback Don Meredith used to say about quarterbacks, "Today you're in the pet house, tomorrow you're in the outhouse." What's true of quarterbacks is true of preachers and state workers and teachers and small business owners. Popularity doesn't last. Today's heroes are tomorrow's bums.
Amen.
Become president of a Rotary Club or a PTA, get elected chairman of your homeowners association. You'll be doing great if more than half the people still like you when you're done. What about the Super Bowl ring? Super Bowl ring is perhaps the most coveted prize of the world of sports, on par with the Olympic gold medal. But even such a ring may not last, because Charlie Walters of the Dallas Cowboys found out that when his 5 Super Bowl rings were stolen from the closet in his home. They're gone. Joe Gilliam won 2 Super Bowl rings as a member of the 1974-75 Pittsburgh Steelers. Go Pittsburgh!
Yeah.
But he pawned them off for a few dollars after being caught in a vicious cycle of drug addiction and homelessness. Super Bowl ring is perhaps, we learned another former Steeler, Rocky Blair, sold his 4 Super Bowl rings to cover a divorce. He didn't live happily ever after. And bankruptcy proceedings. Cowboys Thomas Henderson had his Super Bowl 12 ring seized to pay back taxes. Former Raiders All-Pro cornerback Lester Hayes sold his to pay for dental work. Morgan. Mercury Morris of the Miami Dolphins sold his ring to raise money to clear his name during a drug trafficking case. Yeah, smiley faces, but with the real face behind the smiley face make itself. What's burnout? When a person suffers burnout, they're exhausted physically, emotionally, and spiritually. They wear themselves out by striving. They impose unrealistic expectations, and they suffer burnout, and that's continually being frustrated, for there is no way that he or she will reach their goals. And Solomon suffered from that burnout, but he comes close as he recognizes that condition. It's been said by Thomas Alva Edison this: genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Even when we were with you, we gave you this rule: if a man will not work, neither shall he eat. 2 Thessalonians 3:10. Now, many in our society who are sluggish and lack desire to work, but most of us do not work so that we may eat. But Bible times, if one did not work, he literally did not eat because he had no food. That was the situation. A widow and has her son die, and the old man's dead, and the son dies. Remember the woman had the son die? Women didn't have the work opportunities back then they had today. That meant the old lady starves to death because the son's dead. Jesus raised the son from the dead to supply for the widow. But because many people at the grindstone is not food or other basic necessities, but status and pride. And we go into a room full of strangers and start talking with them about, one of the first things we talk about, our jobs, our careers. And we run to work. And this is really what we have at the end of the day. Trying to get ahead is a symptom of burnout, and we envy one's neighbor. We seek after what can never be captured, the wind, well described in the burnout. The American dream of rising above one's neighbors is not new. Solomon dreamed the American dream of, during the days of World War II, 1 chicken in every pot and 1 car in every carport. Yep. And under Lyndon Johnson, 2 chickens in every pot and 2 cars in every garage. And then the women went to work. And you know the rest of the story. Well, one thing I want to tell you, I always give 100% at work. 12% on Monday and 23% on Tuesday, and by Wednesday I'm really warmed up. I get 40% on Wednesday, 20% on Thursday, and 5% on Friday because I want to go to TGI. Fridays I want to get out of here. I want to go home.
Happy hour.
You do not want to buy a car that was built on Friday. You don't. Yeah. You buy a car that was built on Wednesday. Balance, work life. Be merciful to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eyes grow weak with sorrow, and my soul and my body with grief. My life is consumed by anguish, and my years by groaning. My strength fails me because of my affliction. My bones grow weak. This is King David. He had burnout. And in his alarm, he said, I'm cut off from your sight. You heard my cry for mercy when I called to you for help. Love the Lord, all his saints. The Lord preserves the faithful, but the proud he pays back in the full. Be strong and take heart, all of you who hope in the Lord. Only by recognizing that we cannot do it on our own, we need the Lord, we can gain and begin to recover. The Lord is our strength. Burnout means we need help, and we cry for help. Well, let's move along here. Let's really move along here. The world says work hard to get ahead. Jesus says work hard to show the world who you're really working for. This is a little bit evolutionary, but I thought it was cute, Glenn. You start out as a monkey in evolution. You got a dagger in your hand and a spear and then a rake and then a jackhammer, and then you're back to that prone position, banging on a computer keyboard.
Yeah, in a few years, that's what our kids will look like.
And that's what they look like, hunched over like a Cro-Magnon. Always abounding in the work of the Lord. I like this. Always abounding in the work of the Lord because of why? Knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. Enough said. To be continued next week. But Ecclesiastes, Brother Glenn.